Lori Vallow Daybell getting fired up in the courtroom for another motion to dismiss her case. I think this is the fourth motion she's filed as pro se, trying to dismiss the case, this time based on evidence. And I know a lot of that sounds complex, having to do with the extraction of the data on Charles Vallow's device, and as far as how to read that data, and the state's trying to explain that they have given everything they can. She says that the state is cherry picking the evidence. I want to go to Rachel Smith, special prosecutor on the Idaho case. You're familiar with this evidence. Can you translate to us what just happened there?
It's clear that Lori believes that she didn't get the entire data. If you think of it like a bucket, she's claiming that the police and the prosecutors only gave her a report about the top of the bucket, or just gave her a portion of the bucket, not the entire bucket. That's what she's claiming. And we're hearing from the prosecution that no, they gave them the bucket that they had. And while technology may allow them to give a new and improved bucket, that at the time that they gave it, they gave what they had. And so the court is telling us that, look, the affidavit from your expert is consistent with what the prosecutors are saying, that they gave you what they could. Lori doesn't think that's true. The judge is showing a tremendous amount of patience. And so she's complaining that they didn't give her the entire bucket, that they only gave her a report or skimmed off the top. The court in the affidavit seems to indicate that's not true.
And this expert witness that has already been precluded, Lonnie Dorkin, the judge is basically saying it's too late in the game for you to bring that in, even if all of that gets ready. Is this a last ditch effort to dismiss her case? I thought she wanted a speedy trial.
Well, if she can get the case dismissed, I think any defense attorney, I would love to hear Benjamin's thought. If he could get a case dismissed, they're always going to argue for it. So Lori's actually showing some strong spine, clearly is pushing for the case to be gone. The judge isn't clearly having any part of that, but it's the right ask. It's at the right time. I suspect we'll see more of that because that's a good strategy. If you can get the case gone and never have to worry about the jury, that's a tried and true defense tactic. It just
So
won't, I don't think, work in this case.
the question is if, right? So Benjamin, that brings us to you. Is this just another Hail Mary? Did she make valid points?
This is a Hail Mary. You can see that the judge wasn't really entertaining it. The judge was like, we could probably put this off to Friday, maybe. The judge has to allow her to speak and allow her to make a record, because what you don't want is this case to be overturned on appeal because you didn't allow Lori Vallow to make her argument. So as a defense attorney, yes, you're trying everything you can to represent your client and to get the case dismissed. So she's throwing everything against the wall and seeing what sticks. And maybe she's hoping that the judge will dismiss her case based upon this evidence, but most likely the judge will probably deny this motion, may allow her to argue it, of course, but probably deny it and let it go and have the trial proceed as normal.
Judge Boreski said, okay, maybe we can do this Friday. We can't do this now. We have jurors here waiting. They're at lunch, and they're going to come back in ready for the next witness. Now, we got to hear from jurors. We got to hear some of their questions to the witness, the retired Captain Keller with Chandler Fire. Taylor, your thoughts on any of the questions that stuck out to you regarding what happened at the crime scene?
Yeah, I was actually impressed with the jury questions. It shows that they are paying close attention to, the testimony and even a little bit of the, cross-examination. And it's been kind of boring, compared to some of the other crazy, salacious details that are going to come out. And we're talking technical terms, but important. So to see the jury, talk about, was there a physician patched in, and the technique that was used for CPR, that to me shows me that they're thinking they are going to be a well-informed jury. And I appreciated the follow-up questions from the prosecution to really go a little bit farther and explain the answers to those questions, so that if there are other jurors on the jury panel, that they will fully understand the answers to those questions.
And what would you remind the jury about Charles? I mean, it seems like Lori's trying to cast doubt and in a sense point to first responders of what they did or didn't do.
Yeah, to really just try to point the finger, I guess. We talked about it a little bit yesterday about how she was gonna, throw Alex under the bus. But it seems like today, based on her line of questioning, she's kind of trying to show that it was the first responders that really didn't do their due diligence. So that's kind of an interesting little spin, I guess, that I didn't really see coming.
We got some questions from our watchers right now. Edelweiss asking, what's the relevance of these questions? The man was already deceased. Rachel, go and tell us. I mean, from either side, both prosecution and the defense, they are asking very specific questions to the response after the shooting.
There's 2 or 3 different ways that it can be relevant. One is they're trying to establish that Lori and Alex sat on the crime scene, that there was plenty of time for them to plan, get their story straight, coached highly, between the time that Charles was shot and the time that the police were actually there. And so anybody who changes the crime scene, anybody who originally sees the victim and sees what happens can affect an assessment of time of death. I think it's also important when you discuss the changing of a victim's body and the position of the body when it comes to looking at later analysis of ballistics and later analysis of the angle of different bullets, the extent of injury. So there's some real relevance. And I was kind of impressed to see Lori hitting those because those are things that will be argued in closing argument.
True. And we have a question from Lee Fowler asking, did Alex have Charles's blood on him from CPR? What would that say at all if he did try CPR? So from what we know, he came out pretty much unscathed. Besides the cut on the back of his head, there was not a lot of blood on the scene. First responders have said that Charles's shirt was soaking up a lot of blood, and there was not a lot of damage around to indicate that there was some sort of fight. We know that in the police report, Alex had a chance to wash his hands. Again, he didn't call 911 until about 45 minutes after the shooting. What was done in that gap of time, it's very unclear. He's the only other person in that room besides a dead man. So Benjamin, if you are on the defense here, are you going on the self-defense narrative that Alex did this to protect his sister? If you're representing Lori Vallow Daybell, what's the mindset?
Yes, you have to have self-defense because you have one person's dead, one person's alive. So the only thing you can say is that you were attacked and you had to defend. And here they're saying that they defended Lori's daughter here. So Alex was trying to defend Lori's daughter. So this is your main defense. And you said that he did have to kill her and maybe I did CPR, but there's no blood on me, but I washed the blood off of me. So that's their defense too. The blood was washed off because I tried doing CPR, I washed it off, and we ultimately up to the jurors to decide whether or not they believe the defense. It's in the jurors' hands then, but you have to do everything you can because if you have a person who's dead, and a person who's alive, the only thing you can say really is I had to defend myself and in self-defense.
And as you know, there is a lot of self-defense cases in Arizona. Guns are accessible. Self-defense claims happen a lot. We have a question from David asking if they're seeking the death penalty. They are not seeking the death penalty in a murder conspiracy charge. We have Mel McDonald back. We're hoping third time's a charm with the audio. Mel, your thoughts?
Yes, let me just add this. I've been trying to get on and I missed a lot of the exchange, but there was just one thought that I had from yesterday that I think applies today. That is the body cam that the detectives had, which showed the reaction of Lori when she drove up in her car after the killing had taken place. Anything that you look at about her reaction, absolutely neutral. It's like planting flowers in a pot. The utter lack of emotion, and I think her silence and her reaction is a gold mine because her brother has supposedly been hit by a baseball bat, not an expression of concern. Here, the husband that she's had for many years total negativity, absolutely no emotion. And with her representing herself, I think what it does to really damage her is the jury can see how she performs in questioning and communicating with the judge and with the witnesses. I think not only is she devastating her opportunity to gain any kind of sympathy, but the jury can see that she is a bright woman, that she's attractive, that she's smart, but above all, the only emotion I've ever seen was in her opening statement yesterday when she choked up, and it was only because she was talking about her own issues, her own problems.
Wow, Mel, I definitely appreciate that take, and you're right. She has not been emotional through this whole saga. We may have seen her a little bit emotional in her allocution on Rachel Smith. You remember that in 2023 when she was sentenced, when she talked about her children and how she talked about Tylee. And specifically when she does talk about Tylee, that's when she gets emotional. But a lot of people that are watching this case and obviously have feelings about Lori, they don't believe it. Rachel, what did you think about, let's go back to opening statements. Is that real? Is it genuine?
I agree with the judge that when Lori's talking about things that affect her, and because Tylee was with her so often, because she was alleging that Tylee was taking actions to protect her, she gets emotional. Whether that's feigned, whether that's exaggerated, whether that is her own self-interest, her own self-reflection, I'm not sure. There are times it feels stretched, and then other times I think she's genuinely emotional about what happened to her.
Mel, what do you think of her cross exam so far?
The cross examination is leading almost nowhere. The purpose of a cross is to try to pick holes in the case. The damage I see is that she's coming across as very bright, very well prepared. And as this evidence is going to evolve, her greatest hope is could she have some kind of sympathy with the jury? She comes across as very bright, very articulate, but her questioning just drones on and on. That's why I think having a seasoned defense attorney to sit and ask questions rather than her for half of the day, letting the jury see her respond, how she acts. And then I couple that, I can't get over the indifference that the body cam showed of her getting out of her car, leisurely going there. If your husband has been shot, if your brother's been hit in the head with the bat, any normal reaction would be panic, hysteria. And she is like a lily blowing in the field. It's unaffected. And I think that will show the cold, callous nature of her inner being.
Yeah, she's asking a lot of questions to Chandler Fire about the entire protocol of first response and how that works. And like you said, it does seem like she's droning on and on. This brings me to Benjamin. When you are up there on the defense and you're doing cross-exam, you have a list of questions, but how much of it is calling an audible and pivoting? It seems like she's going off a script, but there's an art form to it.
Yes, you have to listen to what the witness is saying. And you do have a script, but the witness gives you a golden nugget in cross-examination. You need to follow up on the golden nugget. But like Mel was saying earlier, if she's reacting or like smiling or smirking after she does her cross-examination, the jurors are going to see that, and the jurors are going to judge her based upon her reactions, her emotional reactions. So when you have a seasoned defense attorney who's up there doing a cross-exam, there's going to be pretty much straightforward, professional, but you can see Lori is having reactions. So this is definitely going to hurt her in cross-examination if the jurors believe that she's not showing the right reaction, or she's getting too upset based upon the witness's answers to her cross-examination. So I'm sure she's going to have to prepare, more at night for these other witnesses who are coming up. But right now she's doing an okay job, but she could be doing a better job if she was experienced and had a license.
She doesn't have that seasoning, right? You make a good point. They're watching her facial expressions and her body language, And she may think or be feeling herself when she's done and she's thank you, no more questions, and think she did a good job, but they're watching that. And so you attorneys have that poker face where you're not giving up too much. You're calm, cool, collected, and I was very stoic. And it's almost like, all right, I answered the question right in class. The teacher gave me a star for that. It's like, I'm happy to have come this far, but they are watching those expressions. Taylor, for her to talk about your friend and your former client and say that he was aggressive, physical, intimidating in opening statements, I mean, I'm sure that upsets you at the same time because you knew Charles. But obviously this jury doesn't know Charles like you knew him. It's a blank slate for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of shocking because anybody that knew Charles knew how much of a lover he was and a kind man. I mean, that he was a Southern gentleman from, the South, and there were anybody that I've talked to, there were no mean bones in Charles's body. And in fact, this morning I was talking with some of my staff here in my office about the trial that as they've been watching the coverage, of the trial. And one of them remarked how she remembered how nice Charles was when he would come in, even in a moment of crazy distress where everything is falling around him. His walls are crumbling and his wife has taken everything from him, including his clothes and his underwear, and he had nothing and he's fighting for everything. He was still very pleasant with our staff, and that made a mark that 6 years later, our staff still talks about that. So to see her try to, villainize him and make him this aggressor, I kind of had to chuckle at that. But, what else does she have? She's going to throw everything at the wall and see what sticks.
And Charles obviously not here to defend himself. Now, we have had 2 jurors excused. So we now have, I believe, 12 men and 2 women for various reasons. We had them excused as we went into today. Rachel, I got to ask you, did this jury get selected a little bit too quick? I mean, what do you think about that? Is that a concern?
In a case like this, that would concern me as a prosecutor. It's easy to second guess how quickly jury selection went. However, with Lori not asking questions, it's not a death penalty case. There are fewer counts, a shorter witness list, that took as long as they needed it to take. The choice maybe to add a couple more alternates, I might have requested. But these people seem engaged. They're asking questions, so they're going to be fine. In the back of my mind, I'd be worried about it, but they have it under control.
We've gone through 4 witnesses so far. We know there's 21 on the state's list, and we don't know what Lori is going to have. We estimated 5 to 6 weeks. And Rachel, I'll go back to you. What do you think of the timing and pace of this so far?
The pace of this is going a little bit faster than I thought. I know Ms. K estimated 5 to 6 weeks after Lori was allowed to go pro se. I think it isn't taking as long so far as they expected. So we'll see. And I certainly don't want to jinx anything, but I suspect the judge is pleased. They're moving it along. They're getting in witnesses. There do not appear to be long protracted pauses. And you heard him say, I'm not going to make this jury wait. So I think they could wrap up more quickly than the 5 to 6 weeks. And it's very clear that this judge is going to make both parties keep their cases going.
This court has been very respectful to the jury. We have a few minutes left. They want to stay on schedule. But Benjamin, I have to ask you about Trina K. I don't know how much experience you have with these prosecutors. There's a lot of prosecutors at MCAO, but just what are we getting from a Trina K? And because Rachel, you're a great prosecutor as well in this case, and you had a great team around you. And we saw in that 2023 trial, a lot of people were talking about Lindsay Blake as well, and Rob Wood, and just kind of that rotation of people going after Lori. But in this case, Trina K is leading the way on her own. What do you think, Benjamin?
Yeah, I mean, Trina Kay is a very experienced prosecutor. I've been up against a lot of the prosecutors in Maricopa County, and she's one of the best they have. And that's why they put her on this case. And most of the time, if you're gonna do a murder case, you're gonna be one of the more experienced prosecutors to be able to rise up to do a murder case. So yes, she's gonna be having her 21 witnesses asking questions, and she's gonna keep to her game plan. And Lori's gonna have to hope for some fumbles out there, because if there's a fumble, maybe she can pick it up and run with the ball. But Trina's gonna stay to her game plan and keep moving forward in prosecuting this case.
Mel, I'd like to ask you, what do you think about Judge Boreski so far in the patience he's had?
I think he's shown great patience. He clearly has control of the courtroom, and I've been impressed with the way that he's managed it. He's moving the case along. There was just one other thought I wanted to touch on that I think is really, really significant, and that is Lori attempted to address yesterday her lack of emotion. She was asking different witnesses at the scene, the paramedics and that. Well, they weren't excitable, trying to justify her lack of emotion. And the thing that kept ringing in my mind, and I think this juror has got to think it too, if you're going on the scene, if you're a police officer and there's a stranger that's hurt, you're going to react one way. But if one of our family members had been shot, or another family member had been hit with a baseball bat, or something had happened where your children are present, your emotions would be off the wall. I love watching videos of veterans returning home and surprising their loved ones. The raw emotion, people weeping and embracing. And I keep going back, her cold, callous getting out of a car, not checking on her deceased husband, not checking on Cox, just standing there like a potted plant. I think those body cams showing her lack of emotion and then her attempt to try to justify it, I think is going to be overwhelming. That coupled with her daily exposure with the jury seeing her, very bright, very articulate, very well organized, I think it drives home how could any normal, rational, caring human being not have emotion, even if you were wanting to get a divorce, to weep when he's been shot to death, or supposedly when your brother's hit in the head with a bat. I think these parts are highly damaging to her, and she's got a nice set of questions, but what she's doing is showing the jury she's very competent, she's very capable, and she's very unemotional.
And there was one point in time where everyone was questioning her competency, right? That's happened a couple of times, and here she is looking very competent, but she may have thought that strategy worked for her, saying, well, you're calm. It's your job as a first responder to be calm in such a situation. So it's all good if I'm calm, even though my husband's in there, shot to death. So if I was hysterical, that would be suspicious. Wouldn't be? I think the jury is smarter than that. And we've got one last question I want to get to. Any of you can answer, but Jenny Allison asks, is the jury going to be distracted by Lori's questions and just forget the evidence because she's throwing everything at the wall? Rachel, go ahead.
Justin, I'll jump in, Justin.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's 'cause everybody's being polite.
Yeah, I'll be quick, and then or you go ahead, Rachel, or
Oh, you go, you
or-
go.
Yeah, I mean, no, I think the jurors are going to be interested in seeing Lori's reaction and seeing everything, her questions. But I mean, they are watching her. I mean, she's the person on the stand, so she's the main show. So the jurors are definitely watching her, what she says, what she asks. So they're going to be watching her for sure.
This will be a distraction. The jurors that I have experience with over the 30 years I've been doing this, they pay attention, they get it right. They don't often get distracted by any red herrings. I think Lori, like the judge, like Mel, the judge said, Lori's doing herself a disservice. She's bright, she's articulated, she's calm, she's collected, and that hurts her.
Taylor?
Yeah, I think that, I don't deal with juries in our practice in family law. We don't have jury trials. We have bench trials where the judge is the fact finder, and I think that there was some worry for me this morning of some jury burnout, and maybe that will be as we get farther into this. This is only day 2. Maybe there is some jury burnout, But when I heard the questions that the jury asked, you know, that to me says that they're still very much in tune and paying attention to all those little things. And, you know, I echo what the others have said about her, you know, emotion, lack of emotion, and how she's carrying herself. I believe is going to end up being her testimony, even though she may not actually take the stand and testify. She is testifying by the way she's carrying herself.
All right, Mel, the judge. I like that nickname. Take us home.
Yes. Yeah, I think we're sitting through probably the dullest part of the case. I think when you
Yes.
start getting into those text messages, uh, the exchange back and forth, the realization that the insurance money, the $1 million, isn't coming to you after all. I think we're sitting through probably the most boring part of the case, just the arrival at the scene. But when the jury starts hearing and specifically seeing those messages, and then her callous disregard, uh, the benefits she's continued to receive, the cover up of concealing where the kids are, their trips to Hawaii, these pieces are going to add up, and I think it's going to be much more interesting. I'm trying to record this trial now to help me get a sleep at night because parts of it just drone on. But I think it's going to start to build up when you get some of these technical experts in and some of this evidence of these texts that she was putting back and forth in these communications with her co-defendant husband.
Hence, when the tea is finally spilled to the jury, that's when it's gonna get interesting and spicy. You guys, thank you so much, Mel, Taylor, Rachel, Benjamin. We appreciate your time.